Today I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. Let's go. My overall vision for this photo is to make it very vibrant with really dark shadows to make it look quite moody, and also to have like a really soft and ethereal glow to the image to make it feel like it's in a different world. And so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply a preset that I apply to pretty much all of the photos that I edit. This preset is called Violet 2 Updated, and it's from a collection of presets called Violet Collection, which I purchased from a photographer named Emmett Sparling several years ago, and ever since I've been pretty much applying it to all the photos that I edit because I like the colors that it creates. It shifts some of the colors, as you can see here in the color mixer, and I find that it sets a great starting point as a base edit for the photos. As you can see, it's shifted some of the colors and also added a bit of softness to the image through negative clarity, but we still have a lot of changes to make to the photo to get it to where we want it to be. So the first thing that I notice here is that the bottom of the image is quite magenta, which tells me that there's a bit of a color cast to the image, and so we want to correct that before we proceed with any other edits. So as we know, the ground shouldn't be magenta, so I'm going to drag the tint slider from the magenta side until I feel like the rock is looking like a natural color, and that looks about right. So if we toggle before and after, we're already getting some nice greens. Now the next thing that I really want to fix in this image is that I noticed that in the green areas of the image there's a lot of brightness variation, and so a lot of these bright areas are drawing the viewer's eye towards them and distracting from the subject, which is our person standing here, actually me, and the waterfall in the background. So what I want to do is to just even out some of the brightness in the greens and to darken down those bright areas to match some of the darker areas. So let's grab our trusty brush, and here I'm going to set a very high feathering. I'm going to max out the feathering so that we don't get any harsh edges with the brushing, and we're also going to use a low flow so that we can gradually dab in the changes that we want to make and not overdo it. So I'm just going to drag down the exposure here so that we can start darkening down some of these bright areas. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's get to brushing. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We've really evened out the brightness values in the green areas, and we can already tell that it's much easier to focus on the subject in the middle without our eye being drawn to those bright splotches. And just to highlight how much of a difference that we've made, let's toggle this mask on and off a couple times. Sweet. That's looking good. We might have to come back to this brushing a little later and polish it up a little bit, but for now it's looking good. The next thing I want to address about this image is this giant area up front. There's not a lot of stuff that's going on there of visual interest, and it's quite bright, and so it's drawing again a lot of attention away from the subject in the middle. And since there's not really that much going on down there, I'm going to darken it down again so that we can lead our viewer's eye to the subject. To do that, we're going to grab a linear gradient, and I'm just going to drag up from the bottom there. Looks pretty good. And I'm going to drop the exposure down. Yeah, that's looking way better. Yeah, around there's where I'm going to leave it for now. And now we're really getting that kind of moody look to the image. And now I'm noticing that this area of rock in front of my subject is also quite bright, and that hasn't really been addressed by the linear gradient. So we're going to go back to our brushing darkening mask and kind of go back into that area and even that out so it's not as distracting. Okay, that's looking really good. And now the next thing I want to do is to make our waterfall stand out a little bit more. It's one of the subjects of the image, and we want it to stand out more. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to use the object selection tool to select the waterfall. Okay. Okay. That's pretty good, but we're kind of missing this part down here. So I'm going to try to fix that by adding another select object to the mask. Sometimes you have to do this, especially when you're masking in Lightroom. Sometimes the algorithm isn't working the best. Cool. That's looking pretty good, actually. Yeah, we can work with that. Let's try it out. Okay, so the other thing, we want to make sure that the person, me, is not selected in the waterfall mask. So we're going to actually come back in here and subtract me from the mask. Let's select me there. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's see if we can clean that up even a bit better, because it's kind of making my calves look skinny, you know? Now, you know what? We're just gonna try and use that. See if it works. Okay, it's not bad. Here's the thing with doing all your edits in Lightroom. Sometimes it's not going to be as precise as Photoshop, but you can get, 90% of the way there, and it can save you a lot of time. So if you're just planning to publish to social media or something and nobody's going to be pixel peeping, sometimes you don't have to have perfect masks or perfect selections, You just have to make that judgment call for yourself. Okay, that's looking good. Now I think our subject is looking a little too bright. If I bring down the exposure, we're gonna have a little more definition in those muscles. So yeah, let's create another mask here, and we're gonna select just me, and we're gonna bring down the highlights a little bit, just a touch. Okay, yeah, that's looking good. Maybe up the contrast a little bit. Yeah, that's great. I think the waterfall can actually be even a bit whiter, so we're going to drag up those whites. And we're going to do that. Drag up the exposure a little bit. And that's looking quite good. I want to make my shorts even brighter. They're looking a bit gray and muggy. And then we can see that selected a bit of the waterfall there. So we're going to try to eliminate that, and also this bit of the hand that's been selected. Oh, that's not great. Let's try that again. That's a bit better. I think that's probably good enough for our purposes. I'm going to drag that exposure a little bit up. Subtle change. It's looking good. The shorts are also looking a little bit blue. As I mentioned, we want just one primary color, which is the green. So we're also going to drag down the saturation here so that we don't have any blues. Okay. Yeah. It's looking great. Okay. Now we want to add that ethereal glow and softness to the image that we were talking about before. And one of the tools that's great for this in Lightroom is the clarity slider. If you apply negative clarity to the image, sometimes you can get really nice glow and softness to the image. Let's see if we can get that. It doesn't really seem to be happening in this case. It just seems to be really decreasing the contrast, which isn't exactly what we want. So we're going to put that back. And so I think we need something more heavy-handed here. There's an effect that I really like to use called the Orton Effect, which is the, I would say, OG way of applying the dreamy glow that some of the photographers on Instagram that you see are so famous for. And unfortunately, this is the only effect during this edit, I think, that we will have to actually pull into Photoshop for. We can't apply the Orton Effect in Lightroom. So I'm gonna just open this up in Photoshop, and we're gonna apply the Orton Effect. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to duplicate the background layer, and then we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur on that second layer. And we're going to put a radius of 20 pixels, perfect. And we're going to apply a blending mode of that layer as screen, which brightens up the layer beneath it. And finally, we're going to go to Image and click Apply Image. And we're going to click OK here. And you can see we're getting this really beautiful glow going on in the image. However, our subject and waterfall is starting to look a bit crunchy. So I'm just going to have the Orton Effect applied to all of the greenery surrounding the waterfall and the subject, but not to the waterfall and subject itself. So we're going to add this layer mask to that second layer, and we're going to mask out. Let's drag that opacity up to 100. We're going to mask out the waterfall and the subject. Sweet. Yeah, that's looking great. And that's all that I think we need to do here in Photoshop. We've got our Orton Effect. So we're going to come here and we're going to save the image. Now we come back into Lightroom. And the next thing I want to do is do something a little bit creative and make the sky really glow to add somewhat more of a light source kind of coming out from the top. So we're going to add a radial gradient up here at the top. We're going to decrease the feather a little bit, and then we're going to drag we're gonna add some negative dehaze, which is a great way to add a glow to your image. That's already looking great, but we've pretty much already maxed out the dehaze. So let's get even more of an effect by just bumping that exposure a little bit even more. Now we can see this glowing area has kind of a bluish tinge to it, and that's affecting our color harmony. As I said, I want the green to be pretty much the singular color in the image, and we don't really want any blues. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually add a green tint to overpower that blue. Perfect. We'll max that out. Now in terms of color, kind of actually want this image to look a bit cooler, but we don't want to affect our whites, which are pure white right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cool down our primary color, and I'm going to come here to our color mixer, and I'm going to drag the greens towards the blue side just to cool them down. Nice. You see the effect that that's making? Awesome. Sweet. At this point, I think we're nearing the finish line. I notice now some more distracting elements. So we're going to just remove those. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Here's our before and after comparison.